And just by looking at the album cover, they ditched the dark colors and the bulletproof vest symbol that had become so synonymous with BTS, and replaced it with a simple white and pink background overlaid with the title. And then, they dropped the single that would change everything. I Need You. It was sentimental, it was hopeful, it was new. Just by looking at the music video, we can see that BTS has also ditched their punk bad boy image and replaced it with a more real, vulnerable, down-to-earth, and youthful feel. This proved to be the change that BTS needed for mainstream success. Billboard called it one of the greatest K-pop songs of the decade. It charted at number 5 in Korea, and even led them to their first music show win on SBS MTV's The Show. And that wasn't all, they released their second single, Dope, on June 24th, which started off with a poignant line from RM.
어서 와. 방탄은 처음이지?
Welcome. Is this your first time with BTS? And you know what? For a lot of people, it was. In a way, their first studio album and tour can be seen as their stepping stone between old school BTS and new school. In November, they came back with their follow-up EP, The Most Beautiful Moment in Life, Part 2, the second EP in what would be dubbed the Youth Trilogy, which featured the single Run. The album focused even more on the frivolity, friendship, and carefree attitude that comes with enjoying one's youth, but just like in I Need You, contrasted that with suffering, depression, loneliness, society, and the stark and sometimes dark reality of life. Compare this with the far cry of the No More Dreams music video. It felt real. It was darker, grittier, more humble, more meaningful, and most importantly, RM lost his mohawk. Run also connected narratively with their previous single, I Need You, and another video released in September titled Onstage Prologue established what would come to be known as the BTS universe, or the BU, which would eventually combine music videos, short films, books, short stories, webtoons, and even a mobile game to create a cohesive story. And I won't go down this rabbit hole because there is a lot to digest, but it's definitely something to look into if you're a hardcore ARMY. The same month, they kicked off their third tour, The Most Beautiful Moment in Life Onstage Tour, where they performed songs from their 2 recent EPs, Part 1 and Part 2. And Part 2 was a hit, their biggest so far. It topped the weekly Gaon album and Billboard World Albums charts, and on Billboard, it stayed there for multiple weeks, the first K-pop act to do so. It also appeared on the Billboard 200 albums chart, not world albums, which was reserved for foreign non-English songs, but simply the top 200 albums, peaking at 171. Which is kind of amazing considering that this was back in 2015. They also received Best World Performer at the 17th Mnet Asian Music Awards. This brings us to Part 3 of the Youth Trilogy, The Most Beautiful Moment in Life, Young Forever, released on May 2nd, 2016, which featured probably my favorite BTS album cover. Young Forever was actually a compilation album of parts 1 and 2, so it was mostly the same songs, but it was notable that it had some new singles, Epilogue, Young Forever, Fire, and Save Me. The latter two performed exceptionally well, with both songs topping the Billboard World Digital Songs chart. This was also the second BTS album to chart on the Billboard 200 at 107, and it topped both the Gaon weekly and monthly chart, which earned BTS their first Daesang.
방탄소년단 축하드립니다.
Album of the Year at the 8th Melon Music Awards. They went on to do the second half of their tour, The Most Beautiful Moment in Life on Stage Epilogue, selling out many of their concerts and even selling out KCON in the US where they headlined the event. In September, they dropped their second Japanese album, Youth, featuring Japanese versions of tracks from their previous 3 EPs, which went gold and peaked at number 1 on Japanese charts. And only a month later, in October of 2016, it happened. BTS dropped their second studio album, Wings. It sold over 500,000 copies in its first week. In comparison, The Most Beautiful Moment in Life Part 1, released just the previous year, which topped the Gaon chart, sold about 500,000 in its entire lifetime. Wings was big, but the true showstopper was its lead single, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, which got them their first all-kill, topping 8 music charts in South Korea. Its music video gained 6 million views in the first 24 hours, which broke the YouTube record for the highest number of views of a K-pop group music video within 24 hours. The album hit number 26 on the Billboard 200, the highest ever charting K-pop album on Billboard. They ended up selling 1.5 million copies in South Korea in 2016 alone, and it netted them the Artist of the Year award at the Mnet Asian Music Awards that same year, the first non-Big 3 artist ever to receive that award.
수상자는 방탄소년단
After Blood, Sweat, and Tears, they were on a roll. BTS was unstoppable. In February of 2017, they released the instant hit Spring Day, which, quoting a Korean reviewer, embodied nostalgia and sorrow and opened a new chapter in BTS's aesthetics and lyricism and attracted fans across generational boundaries. Which, by the way, is still on Korean charts after nearly 4 years, and the same day I'm writing this, it ranked number 53 on Melon. It won Song of the Year at the 9th Melon Music Awards. After the release of Spring Day, they went on yet another tour, the 2017 BTS Live Trilogy, Episode 3, The Wings Tour. The tickets sold out within minutes, including in the United States, the first K-pop artist to do so, and went on to win Best Social Artist at the Billboard Music Awards. The first for a Korean artist, but they would go on to win this award 4 years in a row. The next year was a period of massive growth for both the group's popularity as well as their style. They released the Love Yourself series, starting with Love Yourself Her in September of 2017, Love Yourself Tear in May of 2018, and Love Yourself Answer in August of 2018. 3 albums that gave us some of the most classic BTS songs that we know and love today, such as Mic Drop, Fake Love, Euphoria, Idol, and of course, all 3 albums were commercial successes, Her being their first album to top 2 million album sales. But Tear and Answer also did equally well. These 3 albums, as well as their Japanese album, Face Yourself, proved that they weren't done yet, not even close. During this time, they shattered countless records. Their singles went platinum, they topped charts, they won awards. And not only did they break YouTube records, but they broke records that they themselves set again and again and again. This is the period where BTS really started enjoying global recognition, working with huge Western artists such as Nicki Minaj, Designer, and Steve Aoki. It wasn't their first time having international features on their songs, but it was definitely the biggest. And even though they were already, without a doubt, the biggest act to ever come out of South Korea, they had their eyes set even higher. They went on tour once again for the Love Yourself World Tour. During this tour, they collaborated with Steve Aoki to make the song Wasted on Me.
Wasted on me, wasted on me.
Notable for being their first all-English feature, and it also served as a jumping-off point for BTS to gain a following of English speakers. Not that they really needed the help, as they sold out concerts even in the US leg of the tour, including at Citi Field in Queens, New York, where tickets sold out in 20 minutes. And, as if that wasn't enough, they dropped the movie in November, Burn the Stage, which in the US alone grossed $3.54 million in the first weekend, breaking the record set by One Direction's movie, This Is Us. In September, RM had the unique opportunity to speak at the United Nations, where he spoke of anti-violence and self-love. 2 years later, he would be offered to speak on a second occasion about persistence and hope in the face of challenges. And to top it all off, in October, the president of South Korea awarded every member of BTS the 5th class Hwangwon Order of Cultural Merit for outstanding meritorious services in the field of culture and art, which is one of the highest South Korean orders of merit one can receive. And that's no exaggeration. 2019 estimates put BTS's contribution to the South Korean economy to the tune of $4.65 billion each year, an equivalent to 0.3% of the country's GDP. They were the youngest to ever receive the honor. 2019, BTS invited to the Grammys, Time Magazine, Billboard. BTS entered a new era. Not an era of simply global recognition, but global dominance. April 12th, 2019, enter Map of the Soul Persona. First things first, you can't mention Map of the Soul Persona without mentioning Boy With Love. It was simple math. What do you get when you cross the singer of one of the best charting songs of all time that went platinum 59 times in 13 different countries with, without a question, the most globally dominant pop group of all time? Well, you get this. Nothing less than an instant hit. Number 8 on Billboard Hot 100, platinum in the US, 21 music show wins, number 1 on iTunes in 67 different countries, the most liked and the most viewed YouTube video in the first 24 hours, the fastest video to reach 100 million views, a current view count of over 1 billion views, 7 boys, 1 girl, and 7 different hair colors. They were the talk of the town, invited to talk show after talk show after talk show. The second single on the album was Make It Right.
Oh, I can make it right.
Written by Ed Sheeran himself, including a version featuring Lauv. The album debuted at number 1 on Gaon and sold 3.2 million copies its first month, and that's only in Korea. It became the best-selling album in South Korea ever. It swept every major Korean music show, winning Album of the Year in each one of them. They followed up this legendary EP with the Love Yourself, Speak Yourself World Tour, where they sold out both the Rose Bowl and the Wembley Stadium in only an hour, the only non-English speaking act to do so. They even performed as a solo act in Saudi Arabia, the first foreign act to do that. The last stop of their tour was at South Korea's largest venue, the Seoul Olympic Stadium. They ended up grossing $200 million. During this time, they also created a visual novel style game for mobile devices called BTS World, where the player can interact with the members. This also came with an original soundtrack with tracks unique to the game featuring Western artists. Zara Larsson, Charlie XCX, and Juice WRLD for the tracks A Brand New Day, Dream Glow, and All Night respectively. In December of 2019, the group swept the grand prizes for both the Melon and Mnet Music Award shows, the first artist to do that. Map of the Soul persona was legendary, truly a marvel in modern music. So, how could BTS follow up the best-selling album in South Korean history, you may ask? Easy. Make an even better-selling album. And that's what they did with Map of the Soul 7. The album was released on February 21st of 2020, featuring the singles Black Swan and On, and sold over 4.1 million albums in just the first week, and the first Korean album to be certified as quadruple million on the Gaon Music Chart. It debuted at number 1 on music charts all over the world, including the US, Korea, the UK, Japan, and much of Europe. It's not an exaggeration to say that this album left a permanent mark on the world, launching BTS into legendary status and becoming the best-selling artist in South Korean history. BTS had scheduled a Map of the Soul tour for April of that year, which would have undoubtedly outsold their record-breaking tour only a year prior, but unfortunately, the COVID pandemic caused the entire tour to be postponed, including the show at the Rose Bowl, which I was supposed to attend. But that didn't stop BTS, who performed virtual concerts, spoke at the Dear Class of 2020 graduation event, and released the Japanese version of their recent album with an original Japanese single, Stay Gold.
Stay gold.
And to top it all off, this was only June. At this point, it was clear that BTS had already dominated their home turf, and they had topped the music charts all over the world. This time, their sight was set for the very top. Remember that scene in The Social Network where Mark and Sean talk about how they don't want $1 million, they want $1 billion? How they're not interested in catching 14 trout, but they'd rather catch an 800-pound marlin? Well, that's what they set their sights on. The marlin, the biggest music industry in the world, the United States. And at the top of that music industry, number 1 on Billboard Hot 100. This small group from a company that virtually no one had heard about 8 years ago planned to take on Goliath himself and dominate the American industry on their home turf. And all they had to do was speak English. August 21st. Enter Dynamite. Their first and only English single so far, simultaneously performed better than anyone had expected, but at the same time is exactly what we as an audience had come to expect from the legendary boy band themselves. And they did it. They reached number 1 on the US Billboard Hot 100, the Global 200, and the Global Excluding US chart, and they made sure that if you hadn't heard of them before, you definitely have now. And if that wasn't already the biggest flex, on October 2nd, they came out with Savage Love BTS Remix with Jason Derulo, did somebody break your heart? Getting number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 again, less than 2 months after already getting it number 1 with Dynamite, and on the Global 200, where they actually replaced themselves at number 1, the first artist to do so ever.